Alright folks, strap yourselves in because this is going to be a long video, but it will explain all the terms that confuse you and you need to know about the Singapore market. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Car. I'm Utkarsh, coming to you from Singapore. Okay, when you've been immersed in the Singapore market, automotive market, as long as I have, it's very easy to lose sight of what a daunting market it can be for the unacquainted. And especially if you're one of the million or so expats who come into Singapore for a short stint, then go out again, but you do perhaps need a car or you contemplate car ownership, right? You're not a local who is so familiar with the system. In Singapore, family cars cost as much as supercars, right? $200,000 Honda Accord, Toyota Camry. Cars' prices are determined with a deadly cocktail of taxes that pretty much need a PhD to decipher. And then there is financial uncertainty, kind of similar to playing the stock market, because one big component of car pricing is variable. It depends on market forces. It has gone, in the time that I've been watching the market, it's gone from $1 to $100,000 and anywhere in between, right? So you've got a very expensive market, a very complex market, a very variable market, and if you make a mistake, it can cost you thousands. So I've painted a bit of a picture of doom and gloom, but let me assure you that things are not as bad or complex as they seem. And this article, or rather this video and this accompanying article, will aim to demystify this entire affair. Demystifying, simplifying. If you work in the corporate world, you know this is an overused term, but trust me, it's really not that complex. And I've been in this for the entire thing. You have two options. You can go through this video section by section. I've marked everything so you'll understand section by section. And of course, if you really want the ultimate shortcut and you need to buy a car and you really want to get great ROI for your time and money, I offer a private consulting, 2 hours of your time. You will understand everything you need to understand. And you will get a recommendation which you can feel very safe about because you have the benefit of my knowledge. So that option is always there. Okay, let's get into this. Let's get into all the terms. The first step is to understand how car pricing is determined in Singapore, together with how car registration works. These two are interconnected. We begin with the problem, the original sin. Singapore is a very prosperous but population dense island. If things were left entirely to market forces, we have around 6 million people here in Singapore. You would probably have 10 million, 15 million, 2 cars a household, not very unusual. You would have 10 to 15 million vehicles in an area of 734 kilometers square. This is lesser than New York. And these 10 to 15 million vehicles will never move more than 10 to 15 meters because there will always be gridlock. So what the Singapore government does is they have a target that there will never be more than a million or 996,000 vehicles to be exact in Singapore. That's their target. And 996,000 is 650,000 passenger, 140,000 motorcycles, 140,000 goods vehicles, so on and so forth. And so to enable this target, the government has this system of COE and ARF. We'll talk about what these terms are. Is this the best way to do it? I have a point of view, but that's not the purview of this article. We'll just talk about what these terms are. Let's get into COE. COE, Certificate of Entitlement. The most famous term when it comes to the Singapore car market. Now, all cars in Singapore can only be registered for 10 years at a time. 10 years. And they do so by bidding for a COE. And the pricing of the COE is determined by the open market. Well, it's not really a fully open market because only registered car dealers can bid for it, but technically open because any of them can bid for it. And the COE bidding happens once every 2 weeks, and there are different categories of COE. We'll get into what the categories are in a second. The COE, once procured, the 10-year COE, is then attached to a car, a new car, and then sticks to it. So you have the COE stuck to this car. Say you paid $50,000 stuck to the car, and it sticks to the car for 10 years. That said, the car doesn't have to stay in Singapore for 10 years. If you deregister the car, then the COE goes back into the market and you get back a portion of the money you paid for the COE back. So say you paid $50,000 for COE. After 5 years, you decided to export the car and deregister it from Singapore for whatever reason. You get back $25,000, 50% of the money you paid. Now, COE doesn't always have to be for a new car. Suppose your car finishes 10 years. Then you can always rebuy a new COE for the next 10 years. But there are other implications of doing this which we'll talk about. You can also buy half a COE for a older car. So suppose a car finished 10 years, then you want to renew the COE. You can buy a 5-year COE. But if you buy a 5-year COE, that's it. After that, the car is done. You can never re-register the COE after that. Hopefully you got all of this. Now, let's talk about the different categories of COE. There's category A, which is essentially small cars. It's an inaccurate term because it just means engine capacity. So the up to 1600 cc, 130 brake horsepower is category A. Category B is big cars, which is above 1600 cc, 130 bhp. But again, these category A, category B divisions have implications in the kind of car models, right? Category A is cheaper. So often you see a lot of people trying to get bigger cars into category A. You know, a friend of mine owns a GLB, Mercedes GLB. It's a really massive car, but it's category A because it makes less than 130 horsepower, which I don't think is the best choice for that car. But that's an example of how policies work out for the consumer. So category A, under 1600 cc, 130 bhp. Category B, above that. Category C is goods vehicles and buses. Category D is motorcycles. Category E is all vehicles except motorcycles. So it's like a joker one. You can use it for anything. Again, very, very interesting things can happen. So there was a period of time when luxury cars, the main tax paid on paid on cars beyond the COE, the import tax, the ARF, which we'll talk about. There's a period of time when that went up dramatically for more expensive cars. So what happened is, in the interim period from the announcement till when the taxes went up, category E prices spiked dramatically because what people did is, oh, if I register the car with a COE now, I will save $100,000 in taxes. So even though I've finished all the category B allotment, I can still get a category E. Interesting things. The market is very complex, I keep saying. And I'm a little bit obsessed with it. So that's why it's important to have all of this knowledge. Now, when it comes to COEs, two things to note. One is that private hire cars, the Uber equivalent in Singapore, which is Grab, they compete with regular cars for COEs. So that's one thing to note. It's not a separate market for the private hire, so-called taxis, so to speak. Also, for electric cars, whether they're category A or category B is determined by their horsepower. So if an electric car makes more than 130 horsepower, which most of them do, because electric cars are very heavy due to the battery, they'll tend to be category B. But of course, there are ways and means that manufacturers work around this, right? So, beyond these technical definitions of category A, category B, and the variability in the pricing, COE has an outsized effect on the car market, in the sentiment of the car market, and of course the pricing. So COE has been very variable. That's one of the main criticisms of the Singapore car market, honestly, the variability of the COE that creates a lot of uncertainty for the buyer. It has been as low as $1 in the wake of the 2009 financial crisis. I wish I could afford a car back then, I couldn't. And as high as $152,000 in October 2023. This variability in COE can result to very strange consequences. People can end up making money owning cars if they were lucky enough to buy when the COE was low. Because say you buy a car when COE is low and COE goes up dramatically, you could potentially even make money. We'll cover all of these nuances separately, including the story of my first car where I actually did make money. Okay, so hopefully you've got a good grasp on COE. Let's get into OMV, ARF, PARF, paper value and car pricing. They're all connected and I want to explain all of them together, otherwise you'll get confused. If there is one section, if there's one portion of my video or the article I recommend reading or watching, it is really this. This will give you a basic understanding of the car market. Let's begin with how a new car is priced and let's work our way from there. So we start off with OMV, open market value, which is like the ex-factory price of a car. It is the cost of goods for a dealer or importer to get the car. That's how much the car costs them. And then that OMV, open market value, is used as a basis to calculate the taxes paid on the car. I'm going to attach a table over here. You can see it. This is how OMV is calculated. So first 20,000, you pay $20,000, 100% of OMV. Next 20,000, you pay 140%. So on and so forth. You can do the math on this one. But there's a consequence. Let's illustrate this with two examples to see how this tax, this ARF, additional registration fee tax, is a bit like a wealth tax when it comes to cars. So you've got on one side a Toyota Corolla Altis. This has got an OMV of $19,000 roughly. You also pay an ARF of $19,000 because it's 100% of OMV. So you're happy. You only paid $19,000 in ARF. Now, what if you want a Range Rover? Maybe you're a footballer. Maybe you like to travel in style. I don't know. So Here is a Range Rover. This is an autobiography or Range Rover plug-in hybrid. It's very nice, except the OMV is $150,000. So if you're paying, so remember, the Toyota Corolla OMV was 19,000. You paid 19,000 in ARF. 1:1 almost. Exactly, rather. The Range Rover, the OMV is $150,000. The ARF is not $150,000. It is $361,000. Crazy, right? That's how it works. It goes up exponentially due to the table we talked earlier about ARF versus OMV, right? So now with this knowledge in mind, let's look at how new cars are priced. We are going to break up all the components of a new car pricing. So let's stick with the Range Rover. It's an extreme example. Not everybody's buying a Range Rover here, but I want to use this to illustrate the point. Okay. So OMV $150,000, ARF $361. We are already at $500,000 for a Range Rover, by the way, but we are not done. You have to add excise duty and GST. Excise duty is 20% of the OMV, so $30,000. $30,000 can get you a car, a good used Range Rover in many countries. Anyways, GST is 9% of the OMV plus excise duty, so about $16,000. So you're getting the components so far. The cost of the car, factory price factory price OMV, ARF is the basic import tax, additional registration fee. Then you have the excise duty. Then you have the GST. So we are at $558,000. But we are not done. Because now comes in COE. And as I'm recording this, COE is $108,000. So the total basic cost of the car, remember the dealer has not made a profit yet. This is just the basic cost of the car, is $667,000. But the dealer also needs to make money. So any decent business will aim for a 20-25% profit. There are many reasons for that. Cost of capital, variable costs. I'm not going to get into all of them. So Range Rover, or rather Land Rover in this instance, are trying to go for about a 34% profit. A little bit on the higher side, but they have to leave space for discounts. Hence, the new car is priced at $895,000. Imagine that. $895,000, which is about 600,000 US dollars for a new Range Rover. Now it's crazy. It's crazy. And the dealer margin on it alone, which is about 228,000 Sing or 170,000 US, dealer margin alone will be enough to buy you a brand new Range Rover in anywhere else in the world. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of the Singapore car market. Now, a couple of other things on new car pricing that I haven't talked about, but you need to know, because these are kind of variable, they keep changing. There's VES, which is the Vehicles Emissions Scheme. And then there is EAAI, which is the Electric Vehicle Early Adoption Incentive. Wow, a lot to remember. But basically, these are rebates on the ARF. They can make the ARF paid on the car less. So you can see the details over here of how the VES works based on the emission, how the EAAI works, how much of a discount on the ARF you get. But it's a double-edged sword, because the ARF that you pay on the car isn't all lost. Right? The ARF actually is something that you can get back a portion of. We'll talk about this when we talk about paper value. So by reducing the amount of taxes paid on the car, you are actually reducing the amount of money you can get back also. So it's not a perfect straight line discount as you may expect. So we'll talk about this when we talk about paper value. Okay, let's talk about paper value. The most important thing you need to understand about the Singapore market, maybe after COE, especially if you're buying used. In most countries, car prices depreciate as a function of the new car prices. In Singapore, there is an additional factor called paper value. Remember all the taxes that we paid when we calculated the cost of a new Range Rover in the previous section? As it turns out that they are not all lost. It's not like the government's taken them and eaten them all up. You can get a portion of them back when the car is deregistered from Singapore. And this value that you can get of the taxes back at deregistration, it varies over the duration of the period of the car. This value recouped at deregistration is called paper value. Now, whether you actually deregister a car or not, this theoretical value of taxes, this paper value, affects the price of the car, as it represents a bottom ceiling, a value that one will assuredly get back from the car regardless of the condition of the car. So it's just a tax that you will get back. It doesn't matter what the condition of the car is. For the car itself, you'll get back something called body value. We'll talk about that. Now, I've used paper value to my advantage many times, but let's talk about how paper value works numerically, and then we'll get into implications. So the paper value, the deregistration value of the car, which varies over time, consists of two components. The PARF rebate, remember, is the portion of the ARF, and the COE rebate. This is the portion of the COE. It sounds complicated, but it's quite easy. COE rebate is simple. It depreciates over a straight line. So if you paid $100,000 COE for a car, after year 1 you get back 90,000, after year 2 you get back 80,000, so on and so forth. It's 90%, 80% straight line all the way till 0 at the end of the 10th year. And it's not year by year, it depreciates day by day. So every day COE depreciates a little bit. So COE rebate you can easily calculate. PARF rebate, which is based on the ARF paid on the car, it's a little bit more complicated. Here's the table for you. I'm not going to get into the details, but you can see that, for example, for the first 5 years, you will get back 75% of ARF. Then after 5 to 6, it becomes 70%. The main headline here is that at the 10th year, if you deregister the car just before the 10th year, you get back 50% of the ARF. So even if you paid a lot of taxes on the car, you get back 50% of the ARF. There was a subtle change made to this a few years ago, 2023, where instead of getting back all the ARF, you get back a maximum of $60,000. So this penalizes luxury car buyers. Imagine the Range Rover that you paid $360,000 ARF on. Previously, you would have gotten back $180,000 at the end of the 10th year. Now you'll only get back 60. So you can see how this kind of a wealth tax mindset. Okay. So how to think of paper value? Paper value is the least amount of money you can get for your car. And so even if the car gets totaled or whatever, you still get back paper value, right? In the first 5 years, paper value is more theoretical, something you can keep an eye on, but it's not significant because car pricing is determined by market forces. Where the COE is, what's going on, that affects car pricing. But if you're buying used, particularly you're buying a used car more than 5 years old, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, because that may be the time you want to sell it, that's when paper value becomes critical, because what a dealer will give you is essentially going to be paper value plus a little bit of money maybe for the body of the car. So you may buy a $150,000 car, a 5-year-old car, $150,000. You may feel good about yourself because a new car cost $300,000 making it up. But if the paper value of that car is very low and you'll maybe only get back $30,000, $40,000 in paper value, you may just lose $100,000 in depreciation over 3 years. Because you will only get back the paper value plus a little bit of body for a car that is over 7 to 8 or 9 or 10 years old. Right? So you have to be very, very careful. And I'll do a few examples over here. I'll be doing a weekly series where we compare different cars for similar price points, so they seem similar in age and cash outlay, but the actual depreciation and the actual cost to you will really vary based on the paper value. Now, what I have always done is, and I bought a lot of used cars over my time, I always try to buy it very close to the paper value. It's not possible on all models, but sometimes it is. And that always protects me because I only have a certain exposure between my purchase price of the car and the paper value. Again, more critical for used cars. I'll get into many examples over my weekly series that illustrate different things. But note, especially if you're buying a used car, if you're buying a car that is over 4 years old with an intended duration of like 4 to 5, 6 years, keep an eye out on paper value and theoretical depreciation. Okay, so there you have it. You have COE, you have ARF, you have PARF, you have, and then you have paper value. Now, I want to talk about 2 other things over here that you need to know about. COE cars and should you renew your COE after 10 years. COE cars, the term COE car refers to cars that are more than 10 years old, that have had their COEs renewed. Now, you need to do one thing if you renew your COE. Remember the PARF rebate, the 50% of ARF that you would get back at 10 years? If you decide to not deregister the car at 10 years and renew the COE, you give up that tax. Gone. You give up that rebate. So that's the cost when you renew the COE for a car. You give up the tax rebate that you would get back, and then you of course pay the cost of a new COE. Nonetheless, some people still do it because the math still works out. And so you have a lot of cars, COE cars in the market that are more than 10 years old. These typically are the cheapest way to enter the market, though they're not for everyone. It's not the most liquid market out there, but recently that market has become a lot more liquid. The question on whether you should renew your COE, suppose you own a car, you like it, should you renew the COE? It really is a case-by-case basis. What I would say is if you have a long intended duration, there's nothing cheaper than just renewing the COE on your car. And, if you're going to use it for the next 10 years, nothing cheaper than just doing that because you avoid all of the extra taxes. Yes, you give up a portion of the ARF, but you avoid paying all the typical taxes that are built into the price of a car that is newer than that. Okay, so I hope that this article or rather this video was helpful. And yeah, hopefully you have all the resources you need. And if you still, not if you still, it is very complicated. If you just want to make life simple for yourself, the private consulting is always there, though of course, as I mentioned, limited slots. So I'll try my best to accommodate the best that I can. All right, I'll see you next time.